Do you think there's a battle right now specifically for the mind of men?
Yeah, there is a unique and specific battle in the unseen world, if you will, against men. There's one against women too. I mean, the devil, Satan, Lucifer, the bad guy, the fallen angel, he wants to destroy anything good to hurt God. Anything he does against us is to hurt God. But specifically to men, absolutely. There is an attempt to reduce men, to minimize men, to take the roar out of the lion and to make us feel inadequate. Just take a month or so and watch movies, listen to the news, sitcoms, watch even animated into cartoons. And you'll see it's the woman who's the hero, the woman who has the better job, the woman who can do everything better, takes care of the finances, runs the family, and helps her poor husband, the poor guy who can't get anything done. And I think women should be great in the purest of hearts. I think women can be extremely successful and should pursue that and be the best they can be. I'm not talking about a competition between male, female, men, women, husbands, wives, whatever way you want to look at it. I'm talking about a spiritual attack to minimize men, to reduce them, to suppress their strength. Men are to be courageous. We're to be leaders spiritually. We're to be providers and protectors. And I just see an assault against them. You can't do anything. Why can't you? And it's just a constant put down, not good enough, can't make good decisions. Add to that, the problem has been with men throughout history of failure morally, sexually. Proverbs in the Bible said that when a man falls morally, he is reduced to a crust of bread. It actually uses the word in one translation, reduced. So we are gratified by the sexual pleasure, whether it's pornography or actually physically with another woman in some way or fantasizing in the mind. In doing that, there is gratification and satisfaction for the moment. But the net result of that is this sense of being reduced, not feeling good, feeling suppressed. So yeah, the attack is huge. I find men are feeling lonely, more lonely than ever before. I'm reading articles. I'm talking to guys that are successful, have great families, friends of mine in our church. But many, if not most, are saying, I feel lonely, I feel unsuccessful, I don't feel my wife's respect. And some of it's just a vicious attack. So I'm on a mission. And I think many of us should join that mission to encourage men to roar. And roar not in the sense to intimidate or harm, but be who we're called to be. Be courageous and be strong and be a provider, be a protector, be spiritually strong and break off that sense of reducing and minimizing. You are great. And women, be proud of the godly men around you and encourage them. And let's not give in to this weird spirit, this attack to reduce men so they're not who they can be and should be. We need them.
How do you defeat lust?
That's a good question. How do you defeat lust? I think there's a couple, three ways that are really, really clear. If I can just use a Bible verse in the New Testament, it says flee from, which means run, get out of there, free from lust. So if it's a place where you're going to be stimulated, things are going to make you think that way. I was meeting with some guys recently, and a guy about my age in his 60s was being honest and said, to be honest with you, I like to watch a certain type of TV show. I really like the thrill of it, but to be honest, I look forward to looking at it because there's usually some pretty intense sensuality, and I'm staring at that, and it's feeding that spirit on me. So we were challenging each other. I've had seasons in my own life where I just can't watch that anymore. I'd rather be pure than have fun for the moment. So one way is to flee from or alleviate things. In fact, one translation says that, get away from anything that stimulates lust. Sometimes it's friends. Sometimes it's other guys that constantly want to talk about a woman's figure and her body parts and kind of joke and is stir it up and and is saying, if I hear that enough and don't walk away, I'm a pretty godly guy, try to be, but honestly, it's going to stimulate thoughts in me that I'm not proud of. I got to guard myself with people that kind of I'm not judging them. I don't think I'm better than them. I'm just trying to protect myself. I don't have to rebuke them. I just want to be safe. So sometimes I'll excuse myself in those situations, not watching something, not being around people. Jesus said it actually. He said that adultery is not right. He said, I'm going to take it further. If a man even looks at a woman to lust after her, he's already committed adultery in his heart. So there is an adultery here before it's in the bed. I heard a pastor about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's so simple, but it helped me. He said, I'll tell you, men, one thing you can do to handle, sensuality in women. He says, just don't look. And I thought, what? And the more he talked about it, it got on me. So I like to walk a lot, exercise. So I'll walk 2, 3, 5 miles every day. And I'm walking in beautiful neighborhoods in San Diego. And inevitably, there'll be some attractive woman walking by with athletic clothes on. If I'm letting myself be just a normal guy, if I'm not careful, then I'm going to kind of size her up physically, sexually when she walks by me. That would be any man's temptation, whether you're 12 and just coming into puberty or you're 99. I've talked to everything in between that. It's just who we are. We're stimulated by sight. We're very visual about sex. So that just don't look, as simple as that sounds, it's become my go-to. Job says it this way, I've made a covenant with my eyes that I will not look at another woman to lust after her beauty. Now, that's a covenant between him and God. I mean, it's, I just think it works. I know that's simple. So when I'm walking, I say this a lot, but I want to say it again. I'm not trying to impress you. This is what works. So if I will either turn my head or just walk across the street or something, just to, no one knows, I'm doing it because I just don't want to go there. If I repeatedly look there, then I'm going to have more struggles later, and it just grows. I don't want to be reduced to a crust of bread. I don't want to be an insignificant man because I didn't invest in my self-control. I let it get out of control, and it owned me, and I don't feel good about myself. So simple things, and I'm sure there's more, but those are some things we can do, practice these things, and it can help us be pure. One more thing. I think one of the greatest ways to help men be pure is accountability, is having a trusted friend. I have a couple guys that are in a small group with me. We're Christians. We go to the same church. And periodically, we'll just and we want to. No one has a problem with it. We just do a purity check. We say, hey, how you doing purity? And sometimes I ask, sometimes they ask, and we'll just do a little update. And it puts a little checkpoint. I better be. This guy's going to ask me on Tuesday night. I better guard my eyes. And a couple of times when I'm struggling or they're struggling, we'll share. Man, for the last week or so, would you guys pray for me? That accountability, that structure is another way to escape the seductive spirit, sexual spirit that's in the world. It's very hard to escape. We can do this, and we can be strong men.
Do you think that's the advice you give to somebody that's struggling with looking at pornography, and it's just kind of a cycle of looking at it and feeling shame, and looking at it and feeling shame, and it's just confessing enough? I
think the best way, we've done that a lot in the church that I pastor, we have what we call freedom groups, men who recognize they have a bondage, taking ownership. This thing owns me. I'm doing really good for 3 weeks, and then bam. I'm doing good for 3 weeks, and then bam. And so they recognize trying to do better. I'm just going to try to do better is not enough. So we have freedom groups that meet for quite a long time. Some of them, the same group of guys have met for up to a couple years on a weekly basis. And that's where they share. And some guy will still slip, some guy will still fail. But it's helped guys literally come out of that addictive cycle, and they've gotten stronger. And some are completely free of a pretty massive addiction that started in childhood when someone gave them some porn. And we don't, the key here is nobody can judge anybody. This is not a judgmental thing. It's not you're a bad person. Most of the men I know, they're really, really good men. Some of them great family men, great leaders, great providers, really, really good men who have just somehow had difficulty breaking off that cycle of addiction. So yeah, being in a group is a huge, huge help to guys who are like-minded, who are there with you in the journey. And then when they're in the group, if they're having a difficult day, they're supposed to immediately text. So it's not wait till the group meets. It's a relationship. It's 24/7. Sounds kind of rigid, but the guys I've talked to love it and live by it and recommend it to anybody. So if you need a group, I suggest getting one.
Why is it such a big deal? I'm sure there's lots of guys out there that think, oh, it's not a big deal.
Pornography is sexual immorality. It's not just watching something. It is sexual immorality. Jesus said it, I already mentioned it in Matthew. He said, a man who looks at a woman to lust after her has already committed adultery. He didn't do the physical act. He did it in his heart, in his mind, his imagination. So pornography is an accelerator. It's in some ways even equal to and sometimes even worse than the act. I mean, it just takes us way beyond a craving for more. It becomes this thing we have to keep feeding, and it grows. And the guys that I talk to have told me, in their humble moments that it just owned them, and they were ashamed of it. They constantly dealt with the cycle of shame, wanted so badly to tell somebody, wanted so badly to get help and get rid of it, just didn't know if they could. People will think bad if I tell them who I really am. They'll think I'm a horrible person if I let them know I have the struggle. So we've just been real public and encouraging people for many, many years now. It's something that will not help you. It's not something that's a no big deal. Just to put it bluntly, honestly, pornography is an act of sexual immorality. It will definitely take from you. It does not, the only thing it will give you is a sense of distance from people in the right way, and it will give you that element of shame. And we don't want those two things. We want to be close to people. We want to be close to our spouse, and we want to feel good about ourselves, not have shame.
And the reward of it is a freedom, the feeling of a clean and pure heart. It's just one of the most amazing feelings.
Yeah, the feeling of a clean heart, that's a beautiful phrase. A pure heart, a clean heart. King David, who committed adultery, he's the second most mentioned name in the Bible. At an epic point in his life when he was not as accountable as he was in his earlier years, he decided to kind of take a leisurely lifestyle, and he saw a woman, lusted after her, committed adultery, had her husband killed, and I mean, it was a disastrous time, but at the end of it, he wrote a psalm, one of the psalms from the Bible, and the whole psalm, Psalm 51, is his repentant prayer in psalm version, as a response to what he had done. And his heart cry was, God, create in me a clean heart and renew a right spirit within me. Oh, there is nothing like the depth of soul, the depth of your core, where your heart feels pure. That's a struggle. But that should be a goal. That should be where we're headed. I feel best about life. I feel best about my wife. I feel best about my future. I'm more productive in what I do. It's just win, 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 win. When I'm striving and working toward doing whatever it takes, humble myself, and just have a pure heart before God. If you're watching this today and maybe you have that struggle, in fact, I'll be this bold. If you're a man, you're watching this today, it's a guarantee that at some point in your life you had some form of the struggle. Fantasies, emotional affair with someone, flirting with people at work or at school, or actually committing immorality or pornography, all the above, lead us to the place of that reducing and that shame. So I want to pray for you. If you'll just let me do that just for a moment. With my eyes wide open, I'm looking. Father in heaven, I thank you for your word, the Bible, that teaches us the power of freedom and the power of having a clean, pure heart. And I pray for all the men who are listening to me today, that you would put a little spark of hope in them. That's what's so helpful. Don't lose hope. A little spark of hope that I could be a man who conquers this battle inside of me. I don't want to live a double life where I'm projecting, I've got this great image on one side, but I'm struggling, another man who is struggling with this out-of-control passion I'm keeping secret on the other side. God, I pray you'd lead them to the place of freedom. Maybe some of them find a local church like our church here, a place where they can find some other like-minded men who just struggle together and fight together for victory. Show them what to do, how they can find that. Help them to even lead them in them saying a prayer after I'm done. God, would you forgive me? Help me to find the place of freedom in concerning sexual immorality. I'm sexually pure, clean hands, and a pure heart. In Jesus' name, amen.